Hi everyone, this is Carac from Angry Centaur Gaming, burned, cut, broken, and bleeding, carrying a pissy wizard over my back who can't seem to stay alive longer than maybe 45 seconds. It feels like I'm reenacting a fantasy version of every buddy movie I've ever watched. Don't you die on me! What is this, you ask? It's my review for Neverwinter for the Xbox One. And it's a review in progress because despite playing more hours in the beta, now again since its recent release, where I think I'll just call my kid Control Mage and see if he can make sure it never rains again in my hometown, it's still a new release, which means subject to some change, and it's an MMO, which could mean almost anything upon release, just like APB's amazingly long history. What is Neverwinter? Neverwinter is a free-to-play MMO from Cryptic, and these are the ladies and gents who made Star Trek Online and Champions, but now it's on console, so let's sit down, crack a brew, and tell one another lies about our life just like our dads used to do. Here we go, and remember this review in progress is caffeinated, which means shunted to your ear slits at the speed of sound without remorse or restitution. Graphics are up first, the sweet sorcery and science of sight. You know, Neverwinter doesn't look half bad. Now that doesn't mean it also looks half good. It looks somewhere between a middle performance setting on a PC and a high performance setting, but when you walk into the town, it drops down to performing somewhere in the Tandy 1000 era of PC performance, with FPS that hits low 20s, if not below that. However, everywhere else in the game, which is actually where you spend a great deal of your time, and the combat and exploration frame rate was fairly solid. And it better be, because this game isn't about hitting buttons on a fucking 20-part taskbar. It's about relishing the revolving door of a small number of skills, using those skills accurately and intelligently, whilst a good deal of bad guys want to knock on your ribcage and ask to come in. Textures are fairly good throughout the game, but you do notice a drop in both resolution and texture detail to most PC settings, especially when talking to characters and in cutscenes. Though Neverwinter was never going to win any awards for its static looks, the game made the transition pretty well, though I would have loved for the texture resolution to have seen a bump here and there. Special effects abound, from your quest tracker to spells to special moves. The game seems to love particle effects, and for the most part it brandishes that environmental stick fairly well without sticking you in the damn eye. However, environmental effects are almost nowhere to be seen, and the game shows its age here with a sort of what you see is what you get look to it. Character design's fairly bog standard for fantasy games, but character creation, at least when it comes to making your damn ugly mug, is robust and a totally nice surprise on the console. So like the frame rate drops, options for character choices were abundant. Locations are actually very nice looking, and I love the main city's overall setup with interesting backdrops, hidden areas, and quest locations. Venture forth into the land of adventure and mulching, and you will explore a bevy of locations, and though none will stun you, they will do their part to remind you that you're in another world and things need to die. Overall, I would say the graphics are good, with some frame rate hits in the main town being the only true negative here, and I hope they end up improving the FPS in the towns in the future. Sound, music, and voice.
Welcome to Seven Suns Costume Market. Go in and check out the bazaar. Press LB and D-pad up together.
I've always liked Neverwinter's sound. There's something very crisp about their sound effects, and they're delivered here with the same attention to detail, which makes sense because they are the same damn ones. Fire crackles, spells boom, enemies choke, and swords smash into the enemies' heads like metal brain seekers looking for payday. I love the sounds through and through, from the level up ta-da to the enemies to the environments. Just really good sound. Now when it comes to music, Neverwinter's title music is solidly in the booming "Hey Look at Me" department, with a title track that sounds like Conan, Waylander, Beastmaster, and the Expendables should be riding in on bison made of fire. That being said, the music within the game is a better mix of more eclectic sounds, and though I wouldn't go so far as to say it's excellent, it is good, atmospheric, and for the most part generic, which does hurt it when it comes to, say, bringing emotion into environments, but allows it to get out of your way somewhat during gameplay. Voice. I remember the first time I overdosed on Oxycontin and then tried to read IKEA instructions out loud. Though I can't say I was ever impressed with the voice actors themselves, who all sound like Harrison Ford showing up on payday and being reminded they had like 30 parts to play, so he read them from 3x5 cards. The sheer amount of voices is nice, with many NPCs, almost every single quest giver, and so forth, fully voiced. It's just that none of them sound that happy to be there. Imagine good people having bad days doing things that bore them, and you have the voices. Awesome that they are there, but woefully unimpactful. But that's okay, boys and girls, because we're getting to gameplay, and that's why we are here. First, you start out picking from a bevy of races, classes, and backgrounds, and then jump into the game. Like Secret World, Neverwinter exposes the gamer to a more action-packed MMO, removing the regretfully popular in the past 100-button taskbars of MMOs prior, and replacing it with a fairly easy-to-understand power bar with higher levels requiring the use of the left bumper to access, but requiring no more additional thought than required. Everything is fairly compact, and that speaks for the entire game. Everything from the HUD to the inventory are mapped onto the controller, and though there is one particular fiddly bit, which involves having two basic screens to look at what your character has equipped versus what you want them to actually look like, and the ability to modify that, everything overall was clean and crisp. I don't love the horizontalness of the menus, but this is a game that's fairly complex even on PC with various systems all the way from day one launch until later expansions, and trying to fit all that in isn't easy. That's when I noticed there was no mini-map. That's like having no shoes in the desert or no water after intercourse. It's completely vital. I mean, I searched high and low and nothing. You do get a quest line like Fable running through the world, and the map is more than easy to get to at any time with no real loading, but still no fucking mini-map seems like a fairly big omission from the PC version, and I wonder if the guy who was supposed to program that in had some kind of blind spot, so he's just living through life smashing into bikers and not putting mini-maps in games. Because, I mean, there's no excuse. I don't mean that there's no good excuse. I mean, there's simply no excuse. It doesn't make any sense, and it should be there. As you progress in the game, you do begin to unlock a series of customizations for your character, and this is where Neverwinter really shines. Powers are unlocked, paths are unlocked, feats are unlocked, and in the end, as with most MMOs, no two characters will be alike. Add to that the game's insanely robust item list, and you have the means to play almost any character you want in any way you want. Quests are given out both in the main city and far afield, and just like any game of its kind, everyone is in deep shit and you're the only one with hip waders and an attitude enough to dig people out. Shit being, of course, enemy attacks, undead, dragons, magic-raised armies of the dead, and stolen jewelry, and missing people. This has to be the most dangerous land in the universe to live in. I'm surprised the NPCs haven't just packed up and said, fuck it. Now, once you follow your glowing magical line of questing to a location, you usually find that a nest of bad guys have infected the area like Streptococcus badgaiacus, and fighting begins. Battle is a give-and-take affair with an active dodge, various powers attached to your controller buttons, and many NPCs having their own special moves and unique modifiers, making combat feel original and, most importantly, engaging. Moving out of the way of many attacks is the only way to do damage without soaking up a ton of enemy hate juice, and that means paying attention, but the game has no problems mixing mobs with various skills of their own, and you can quickly find archers raining down arrows, magic users bunkering behind some rocks trying to freeze you like a wart with legs, and two warriors stinking of BO and old leather smacking you around up close. You need to dodge, attack, buff, heal, and re-engage, all at the same time, and it's simply a great system that unfolds in front of you. Quickly, as you progress in the missions, you also unlock the ability for multiplayer, which works surprisingly well across Xbox Live, and using the controller becomes second nature. Having met my match a few dozen times, I can say that PvP is insanely robust, while the original story and the campaign have more than enough content to keep even fairly hardened MMOers busy for a while. Additionally, the interplay of the classes really seems to work, and battles amongst spellcasters, rogues sneaking, and warriors yelling at the top of their lungs that this is Sparta, the PvP actually felt really fun. You know, when you think about it, Neverwinter is actually a fairly unique beast. It planned to be a co-op style game before it turned into a free-to-play MMO, but the co-op feeling has remained, and the game's underlying technologies keep the leg to a minimum and the action to a maximum. Joining up with others is about as easy as it gets, and adventuring with a group of like-minded sociopaths is enlightening as it is dangerous. Luckily, the game also doesn't seem to suffer from the first level blues, with quests unloading at a quick pace and jetting you off to interesting locales like a fantasy Robin Leach in search of new lifestyles of the rich and infamous. In fact, the game has an absolute bevy of locations, with quests crisscrossing the land, and since the load times are damn near the fastest I have seen in many games, you won't be troubled by some quests spanning various zones. Add to that the ability to take a large assortment of companions with you to keep you company or just toast enemies from afar while you get up close and personal. There are enough choices to make any gamer feel like one of them fits perfectly with their playstyle. Lastly, like many of these games, you can do things like crafting and so forth, but you also have the ability to upgrade your companions, do various game-specific activities for daily rewards, and though many activities in Neverwinter are bog standard at times, you can easily forget that this is actually a free-to-play game. However, Neverwinter does drop the ball in a few places. Firstly, the quests made me feel like I was being fucking hypnotized every 30 minutes. They are a contribution to gamers' growing number of slack-jawed nerds staring into their glowing picture tubes while family members watch in horror. While battles were fast and furious and altogether enjoyable, the quests are quite simply the most drab affairs I think I've ever played. They make other games' writing absolutely shine. They aren't boring as much as they are utterly forgettable, and it's this curse of absolutely rock-solid gameplay with quest design of the most rote kind that really does hurt Neverwinter. More so on the PC, where there's more competition, of course, than the Xbox One. And lastly, money. Moolah, currency, greenbacks, little simple slips that pay for sin. You see, there are like 5 or 6 fucking currencies, with only 2 of them being needed and absolutely nothing having to be purchased. But around level 20, things begin to slow down, and if you want to speed them up and you want a couple things, then you're going to have to spend a couple bucks. Now, the game is free, so forking out a couple bucks isn't a bad deal since nothing in the entire world is free, and it's less than most rentals. And the game is fairly generous in overall choice of what you get. A careful player can spend nothing or very little. However, to get some items, you basically trade in one currency for another, and sometimes the trade rates are atrocious to say the least. But the real problem is there is simply no need whatsoever for so many currencies. It's like walking into a 7-Eleven and then offering to pay in a peso, rubles, Canadian moose heads, or US dollars. When all you want is your monster condoms, your raisinets, and the questionable burrito on the heater, there's no fucking need. It could have had 2 currencies and cleaned up the whole affair. By such an enormous rate, it boggles my mind why they didn't do it when they had the chance. Impactful on the game itself? No, probably not. Bothersome as hell? Oh yeah. In the end, it's good to think of the gameplay in this way. Some games are great works of art, incredible to see or hear, but ultimately too expensive to experience or have in your homes, best saved for men and women with the last name Pitt or Borgnine. Neverwinter is a cunningly done forgery in many ways, offering almost the same experience, in fact, one that would fool many, and has an infinitesimally easier point of entry, and in fact may have some specialness all its own. But in the end, you know it's not the real thing. You just have to decide if you even give a shit. Fun factor, I'm not gonna lie, the quest couldn't have interested me less if it was 2 nerds talking about Sony versus Microsoft, but the combat is fucking stellar, and the game's leveling system and combat approach is second to none, with an almost addictive rhyme and reason to enemy placement and battle tactics. Joining up with others seals the deal though, and as a console MMO, this thing does it perfectly. Joining up and traveling with another person, or just along with one of the game's many companions, is really amazing fun despite snoring through the story about some circus performer searching for his old circumcision skin. The game world is enjoyably large as well, the PvP is working and in full effect, and the console changeover hasn't impacted my enjoyment one bit, even if the frame rate in the city makes me suspicious that the Xbox is trying to cast its own spell of stun on me. What does Neverwinter do right? Core gameplay is spot on. It truly is. It's enjoyable. I love it. Leveling has a very real and powerful feel to it with lots of flexibility and lots of options. Tons of systems and a boatload of things to do just within the game itself, and none of them are really hidden from you. The sound is really good, I enjoyed it, and it's a major MMO on a console without connection issues on day one for the most part, and that to me is actually fairly stunning. At least it hasn't had any issues as I've been playing it. And free goes a long way in this game. I mean, an insanely long way. I really can't think of another game that's come out where free-to-play has meant this much content. Now, what does Neverwinter do wrong? Too many currencies for no reason, and the currency exchange, that should really be adjusted for console players. You know, Cryptic is not too bad at all with updates, so I think that they're going to pay attention to that very closely and sort of adjust it. The graphic slowdown in the city in particular is bothersome because you are in the city for a bit when it starts up. However, all of your actual gameplay happens outside the city, and there was never an issue. The quest writing is next generation boring, like a new type of lens flare for boredom. It's just really bad. I mean, it's a special kind of boring or just not special in any way. And no player-made missions. And honestly, I was expecting that because this is a closed console. But hey, If the Foundry had been added, I would be freaking out right now. Now, as you guys know, I normally rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never talk about it again rating scale, but because this is brand new and because it's free, that puts that review rating in the shitter, sort of. And so let's just go with a check it out or not, easy enough. And of course, the rating for this is to check it out if you have an Xbox One. If you don't spend a cent, you have a simply massive amount of gameplay here and an incredible MMO combat foundation. You know, here's the thing, nothing is free and no one has the right to ask that something be absolutely free. So though the game works that way, I personally would expect something to be held back since it only makes sense. Here, if you spend a little bit of money to pay back the developer, you might have a cooler mount or something. But not spending money won't lock you out of content, which is pretty cool when you consider the asking price, which, if you weren't paying attention, is again free. As in nothing. That's it for me. If you like the video, hit like. If you dislike it, hit dislike. If you can, share the video or tell some friends, post it on Twitter, or do none of that because it's a free world.